So, good morning, everybody. I want to review AEW Dynamite. And the way I'm going to do this from now on is that I'm going to just talk about, the main talking points. And the big thing about this show was that they had two title changes. And the big one is like Tekla. And a lot of people are saying that there's two ways you look at this. That, people feel like Statlander got screwed over and she didn't show what she could do. And then also there was an interview with her in TMZ and she kind of was saying something like, with the booking with AEW, that they didn't she wasn't allowed to show her best really. So maybe some people felt she lost the title because Tony was being vindictive. And then there's also a report that Tekla did an interview and Tekla was talking about being happy with AEW. So some people may say, oh well, it is double standard. But in my opinion, I'm not really a fan of Statlander's character of the alien, or even like the alien Martian voice or anything like that. I find it too very silly and dumb, really. So I don't mind Tekla being the champion because I also feel with her as a champion, like she's supposed to be this unhinged person, really. So I think that it's okay that they have a new champion for now, really. But I think that me in the future, I think you can do Chris Statlander being heartbroken, and she goes on the warpath, really. And I think that really saying like this is who I am, really. I think that there's a character change that can happen with her losing the title and then wanting to get it back, really. Um, the other part of this is that I think that the reason why they took the title off of Statlander was for two reasons. That number one, they got a lot of praise last week for doing a bunch of title changes. No, for doing the Eliminator match, and then also with Ciampa becoming the TNT champion. So there's a lot of just like, wow, AEW is not doing what they traditionally do, which is long title runs. But I think the thing is that if you do it a little too much, it becomes a little repetitive. And then some people say, hey, you look at WWE, sometimes they change two or three titles, so that becomes predictable. And the predictable thing is that they change two or three titles, then when the heavyweight championship is on the line, really, it's not going to change because people are going to say that's way too many changes, really. Um, so I just didn't. So I feel like they're changing the titles a little too much. I think the other thing I did not like about the show was that I'm okay with Tekla being the champion, but I felt like this could have been done at pay per view or something more bigger or significant. So it's almost like maybe the right time. I mean, like maybe like the right timing, wrong place, really. But the other part of it was that they also had Tommaso Ciampa lose the TNT Championship tonight, and I also understand why they did that because they want Kyle Fletcher going into Australia with the title. I also think they did this too because they're setting up a ladder match between him and Mark Briscoe. So maybe Ciampa was like, "No, nah, I'm not going to do a ladder match at this stage of my career, really." So maybe like that happened backstage where Ciampa saying, "Nah, I don't want to do that," and then he lost the title. And I also think that another thing about this is that they're probably going to set up a triple threat match, which is it's going to be Ciampa versus Mark Briscoe versus Kyle Fletcher in a triple threat match for the TNT Championship at Revolution. So I think that's why they did this. And I also will say that obviously it's not a good look for Ciampa to lose this quickly. It's also, as I said, it's a little bit of a repeat because you had a bunch of surprises. You had the squash match with the Eliminator last week, and you had Ciampa win. I had the title being taken off Ciampa, and now you have um Statlander losing the women's championship. So three title changes in like a period of 2 weeks, and they're all like surprises. In addition to Brody King being a quick surprise, um, a surprise with a quick squash match. So I felt that was a very out of place. I also kind of felt that it would actually be good if they didn't change the titles here because imagine if Kyle Fletcher won the titles in Australia, or he didn't win and he went on the warpath, or Don Cal said something like, "Okay, you lost during the collision show, but on the house rules, you better win," or something like that. Like there could have been something there, or something, or you could even do something like maybe Don Cal says something like, "Okay, you've been losing. I don't want you to chase that title, but." But you and Takeshita aren't thin ice, so you guys need to win the tag team championship. And and there is a deadline for that. So they could have easily done something with Kyle not winning the TNT championship, and then maybe doing another storyline where it goes after a different title. And also like too, like I think the ladder match that they're gonna do Fletcher versus Briscoe, that's gonna be violent and that's gonna be really epic. But it is kind of like a little repetitive that we're doing Briscoe and to Fletcher again, and then Ciampa's kind of treated like an afterthought. And I know like I am Zayn, a few other people worried that, oh well, maybe what's gonna happen to Ciampa is that he's gonna be like maybe he's gonna be demoted to Ring of Honor because that needs like a lot of star power, or he may just be that person that's like okay, he's gonna sit at home for a couple of months and then they're gonna forget about him, but he's like at home with a paycheck. That could also be an option, really, but I really hope that he's not just he doesn't disappear in a couple of months. I think there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of things you can do with Champa. So or you can even say, hey, you know what? You can make your own TNT division and have a bunch of stars in it. So like hopefully this is not Champa like gonna be underutilized. Um, Another thing that really pissed me off about tonight, and this is like the one of the worst thing that happened on the show, was that they actually they did like, and I hate these two when they do promos between MJF and Brody King. Like Brody King's really over in the company right now, so why the fuck are they not on television? And they do that a lot in AEW, especially. But when you're about to have a show like Australia, it makes a lot of sense for both people to actually be at the taping and for them to speak on camera and hype up the crowd. WWE does it all the time because that works. Doing like okay, we're gonna do a taping between the people or video packages where one person's talking, the other person's talking, they never really meet on the video. Um, I'm not a fan of that. I think being in the ring, spitting that hot fire in the ring is actually the way to go, really. So I didn't like that at all. And also, too, that I wasn't really a big fan of the show. There were way too many tag team and trios matches. And I wanted to start talking about a little bit about the show, like my opening about the show. And that's how I'm going to do this as well, really. That I'm just going to start with like the positives, the negatives, what's really significant about the show, and then maybe later on in my review, like now, I'll talk about like the card and everything like that. So it opens with Omega and Swerve doing a promo with each other, and Swerve says things like, "You were the guy when I was at the top of the company. You were not around. You were in the hospital. You were suspended, and people call you the god of professional wrestling, but you're like a false prophet to me." Um, and he also accuses Kenny Omega using his EVP powers to to get opportunities. And Kenny Omega says, "People call me the god of professional wrestling. I don't call myself the god of professional wrestling." So it's a title that he earns. It's not something that he creates. Not like Chris Jericho creating magnanimous titles for himself. Um, he also says, if it wasn't for you last week, I would have a chance at the world title. I'm asking for a fight. If it's about wins and losses, that is what we're going to do. And I appreciate him saying that because that's just the continuity of that wins and losses are mattering in AEW now. And then also, he says something like the most dangerous man in AEW is Brody King. And I appreciate Omega for saying that because that puts Brody King over. And then they fight in the ring, they fight in the crowd, and then they go through a table. So a couple of things about this that, I kind of like this a bit. And this was the only time they did some fighting in the crowd tonight. And I appreciate that, so it didn't feel like monotonous. Um, and then also, too, I was kind of saying to myself, I think it would have been better if Kenny Omega was like, you know what, I didn't tell you to get into my business. Number two is that I'm on limited time because of my diverticulitis, and every loss means something. Every win means something. And he says something like, okay, well, since, I lost, I'm going to make up for it by beating you, Swerve. So I think that would have been more like direct about what the issue is. I think them kind of saying, oh, well, you don't deserve your title or you're arrogant or you abuse your power. That's kind of like not really what their beef is about. Their beef is about that Omega had a match last week. Swerve tried to help him out. It didn't work out. and then now Kenny Omega's mad at him. So what I talked about Omega saying stay out of my business, and and saying I'm a business, and Swerve saying like something like maybe like what, I was trying to help you out. You're taking this like too personally, and Omega's like, what, this is like one of my last chances. Maybe you try to sabotage me, and Swerve's like, oh, you're paranoid. Like that could be like that would have been a better like dynamic really. Um, but yeah, but it was a good promo to start the night really, because obviously both of them are really over people. The next match was the Don Callis family, Takeshita, Josh Alexander, Mark Davis versus um, John Moxley, Claudio, and Pac. And with a lot of the match tonight, I wasn't really invested in them. I was mad that Josh Alexander lost because you know what, he's a former TNA champion. He's done a lot of great matches in TNA wrestling, so he shouldn't just be the jobber, every single show. The next match was Tommaso Ciampa versus Kyle Fletcher. Tommaso had a lot of speed in this match. Kyle did a suplex outside the ring area. Tommaso Ciampa does a psycho driver on the ring steps. Kyle Fletcher does a running knee and a brain buster, and there was a lot of near falls. And what I really liked about this match was that it was obviously like they were just being the hell out of each other. They were just being ruthless and vicious, and that's kind of what you get from a Kyle Fletcher and also a Tommaso Ciampa. So they wrestled kind of both very appropriate to their characters, but then I also appreciate that Don Callis did not interfere, and Kyle Fletcher was saying don't interfere. And one of the points of that is because you can't always have Don Callis do a screw job or interfere or do that thing too where somebody gets close to him and he starts punching them or whatever. Because at a certain point, it just gets a little too repetitive. And then Kyle Fletcher beats him clean, and now and I talked about earlier why I felt that was kind of like anticlimactic, but or it was something that shouldn't have happened, because it buried Tommaso Ciampa. It's too soon for him to lose the title, but I also can understand why they had Kyle Fletcher win here. The next match was Dan Garcia and Clark Connors versus Orange Cassidy and Roderick Strong, and I wasn't really involved in this match too. So this is like your second tag team match in a row, and then the only thing that happened out of this is that Roderick Strong walks out on Orange Cassidy, and then Orange Cassidy wins a 2-on-1 match, and he pins Daniel Garcia. So I kind of was saying too that this whole entire is Roderick Strong part of the conglomeration? Is he not part of the conglomeration? Is he loses patience with the conglomeration? Is he going to join his wife in the Death Riders? Like all that crap, really. It's kind of almost like, you know what? Okay, we've been. I think it was like October or November. This thing has kind of started. So it's almost like, like, can we move the fuck along with this? And Roderick Strong. When I first heard the name Roger Strong, I thought that he was this big badass wrestler, but he looks like Johnny Knoxville. He looks like Joey Ryan with a better haircut. But he's nothing really. He's nothing to this company, and he's really nothing as a professional wrestler in my opinion. Like what the hell has Roderick Strong done? Like honestly, this would be just like, I don't know. It's almost like you took some guy in NXT that doesn't really matter, and then you are putting them in this big like storyline, or I don't know. I don't know how to say a good example. It's almost like if you took James Ellsworth, or maybe like a wrestler like Funaki or somebody else, really like that type of like wrestler that just has a couple of matches, that's it. Or it's almost like maybe you took like the Stone Pitbull, that guy, and Tomorrow Ishii. Imagine if you took Tomorrow Ishii and he's on AEW television, and you put him and like a big like heel spot or whatever, really, like, or heel storyline. That's kind of what it feels like. So I really feel that you're making people who matter don't matter, or you're making like a storyline out of people who don't matter. You're trying to make that significant, and obviously Orange Cassidy wins because Tony Khan has a hard on for Orange Cassidy the same way Dave Meltzer has a hard on for Tony Khan. So obviously you know who's going to win this match. They did like a segment where Wheeler Yuta comes out. He kidnaps Amina Shirakawa when Tony Storm comes out, and then he just like cuts a bit of her hair off, and that was definitely some good heel heat. Um, I don't like Marina Shafir's name, the mother's milk attack, because obviously putting somebody on your breast and like put them in like a headlock or whatever. That's not really a dangerous type of move. That's not really formidable. And then also calling the mother's milk is kind of like a sexual innuendo type of thing. So it's almost like it just doesn't fit her character. Um, Maybe call it like the heartbreaker, or or I don't know, I call it like the heartbreaker or something like that. Really, um, that would be kind of be like the what to do really. Um, and then I mentioned before that I was mad that Brody King and MJF were not there tonight, and then they did a promo. Um, I just threw my pen because I was angry, but I was mad that they did a promo instead of them being on camera. They also had the three-way tag eliminator match between the Young Bucks, the Rascals, and Private Party. So again, it's another one of these things too where I'm saying to myself, you just did three tag team matches in a row, so I just am not interested. And then we also know what's going to happen with the Young Bucks. It's going to be super flippy stuff, and obviously, why do they win? Because they have the EVP power, and I also think they're going to have a match. If I'm correct, I think they're going to have a match in Australia, not Revolution. So I really think that what's going to happen is obviously they're going to lose, but they're there in that match because obviously they have the biggest star power out of any of these groups, really. But I do hope they do something with Private Party and the Rascals. I can imagine it's the weed party versus like the liquor party. That would be kind of like interesting. But I'm kind of I think the Young Bucks do a lot in AEW. I appreciate what they've done, but it's kind of like a repeat stuff. You know what type of match you're gonna get, so I wasn't really invested in the match. And then the main event was Tekla versus Statlander. And again, I wasn't really involved. I wasn't really invested in the match. I watched a little bit at work because I fell asleep during the show, mostly. Then I had to rewatch the show again. But when I saw the match, it was just typical AEW match. It's a typical hardcore match. It's just super bloody. It goes for a while. You kind of see the moves and everything like that, really. So, and then Tekla's all bloody and everything like that, and then Statlander's bloody, and then there's a distraction by the Sisters of Sin, and then Tekla ends up winning, really. So I think Tekla could be a really great heel champion. I think the Sisters of Sin can eventually win the women's tag team titles, and they could be a super team. I also was predicting that I think they're going to try to do a women's Anarchy in the Arena, and that's going to be a little controversial because I think on one side, I think what I fear is that they're going to do a men's Anarchy in the Arena and a women's Anarchy in the Arena. And the problem is why you can't do both is that it's just way, way too repetitive, because it's the same thing. It's like a 40, 50-minute chaos around the arena type of thing. And sometimes it's hard for cameramen and everybody kind of capture all the action really, So I think that doing it twice is a little too much. I think like for a cage match, like two blood and guts women and men's cage match, I didn't really mind that because I'm so used to the Elimination Chamber and other things like that. I think maybe for some reason, I think Anarchy in the Arena like twice, probably gonna be a lot of repeat spots. So that's what I'm kind of fearing. I think they're gonna do a women's Anarchy Arena one match, no problem, or they're gonna try to do a men's Anarchy in the Arena and a women's Anarchy in the Arena, or they might do an intergender one, which I think would also be a good option. So that way you have like both men and women on each other's team. Try not to do like two of them in one night because I think that's way too much. The other thing that I will say is that I think like, and then I also kind of would say too that when I was first watching the show, what happened to me was that I had to make a couple of phone calls to um I had to make a couple of phone calls, and that kind of ruined my enjoyment of the show because I think like what happened was I was talking to somebody. Like, I'm actually renting a hotel this weekend so I can like have time with my girlfriend, Valentine's Day. And I also was mad because when I got like when I was on Priceline, they said like the hot tub thing, and then the hot tub thing was not available. No, I selected the hot tub thing, and then I thought I was gonna get a room with a hot tub. And then I called the hotel just to confirm and see how much the incidental fee was. And they said, "Oh no, you're not getting a room with a hot tub." So I booked a room with a hot tub, and I'm not getting a room with a hot tub. So, and then also the woman on the operator thing was just talking nonstop, really, so I had to hang up on her. So that ruined my enjoyment because I had to make a 20-minute phone call. Because sometimes when you watch something, you it's almost like it catches your attention, you're transfixed on it. But then if you keep getting distracted by other things, you're not really going to be following it. So that hurt my enjoyment. And then also the other reason why I rented a hotel so um I could watch Grand Slam because I live with my brother, and obviously when he's at work I can review stuff, but he's gonna be home the 3 day weekend. I don't want to give you guys a Grand Slam review 3 or 4 days later, really. But there was definitely like I think like this show to me, I really felt it was very repetitive of what they've been doing the past couple of weeks of a lot of surprise wins or surprise title changes. I think there's certain times you don't do that. I also feel that they don't know how to book their shows because next week they're doing Omega versus Strickland. A lot of people are saying they need to save that for a pay per view. Let that marinate. So the problem with AEW is that I don't think they know how to book, um, in the sense that they don't know how to take a match like Swerve versus Omega and say, let's put it on the pay per view. Let's not like ruin it next week. Maybe you can do something like Swerve and Omega. Um, Maybe you do a tag team match where two members where like MJF comes out and says something like, "Hey, you two guys, clearly have an issue. How about you guys become a tag team and I'll pick out two opponents?" Or there could have been something like or you could have done like Swerve and Omega. Like you could have done like maybe Swerve and Hangman versus like Omega and one of the Young Bucks or Samoa Joe or somebody else, really. Like there could have been a way to kind of like hold off on this match. And there's also a story that Kenny Omega is going to a video game convention. He's going to appear at a video game convention, and that's why they're not doing the match at Revolution, because Kenny Omega has booked himself for something else, really. And if that's the case, he needs to be fired because Revolution's one of the biggest shows of the year, and this is one of the big problems with Omega. And I'm actually losing respect for Kenny Omega, but because he's never really there, he's always like either out on injury. I understand that, or he's out in conventions, or he's out doing other projects. Really, he's just like Hulk Hogan in TNA wrestling when Hulk Hogan was like an American Idol in other places, and he's not wearing like an Impact shirt. He's wearing his own like Hulk Hogan shirt. The point of it is that if he really cares about the company, he should be there a lot more often. Whatever you say about John Moxley, at least he's there every single week, or at least he's promoting the company. And MJF is the same way too. But it says something when you have a lot of really big shows or signature pay per views, and Omega is never really there when he can be there. So definitely that's very problematic. But ultimately, too, I think like I didn't really enjoy the show. Even though, like as I said before, and I'll say it again, that one thing that hurt my enjoyment was that I dealt with a couple of distractions. And then the other thing that I will say is that it was very repetitive with tag team multi-person matches with two title changes. It's good. You need to have some spontaneity, like learn from WWE, because sometimes they will change the title on television just because they may feel, oh, well, we don't want super long title reigns because sometimes that gets a little too boring or something like that. So it's okay to have a bit of a surprise factor, but if you always do surprises, there's diminishing return. And then also you have a championship match this weekend, so you don't want to be like, hey, the title's not gonna change because we're doing so many changes now or whatever, really. Or we're gonna change the title, it's gonna be unpredictable. but it doesn't feel that special because you're doing too many title changes. So I really think that, you know, it was definitely a show I didn't really enjoy, but, you know, they're not all bad.